I'll let you have a chuckle here for a moment. If you're fans of The Room, I unfortunately have to inform you that without method acting, we would not have The Room. And its most famous, arguably its most famous line, "You're tearing me apart, Lisa." So let's talk about how we get there. How do we get from a theater in Russia to Tommy Wiseau? Well, we get there through method acting and many, many other things and mysteries that I cannot possibly solve today. But let me talk about method acting. So originally, method acting is called The System, and it's developed by a theater director named Konstantin Stanislavski, and he works with it in theaters in Russia, and then also writes books such as An Actor Prepares, where he lays a lot of his theories out. And you can think of it in a way as the way that Sergei Eisenstein would write film theory books for filmmakers. This is, as a director, this is a theater director writing a film theory book for theater actors. And what the system, or what later comes to be called the method, is it's a process in which an actor tries to achieve a greater emotional authenticity and psychological intensity for their performance. The goal is always raw emotion and authenticity, right? Honesty, truth, etc., right? As every actor is trying to do. You are pretending to be someone else. You are doing something fake, and you've got to make it feel real. How does one do that? There are, of course, many different schools of thought. The more classical English school of thought is you construct the character from the outside in. Makeup, costumes, prosthetics, accents, things like that, right? Sir Laurence Olivier, building it all from the outside in. Anthony Hopkins, from the outside in. Now, the method acting approach says that is the sort of height of artifice, that the character has to come from the inside out, where that not only means the actor trying to get inside the emotions of the character, but also the actor themselves dredging up the emotional content of their own lives to find ways that it resonates with the character that they're playing so that their performance can be more authentic. And so it involves a whole lot of script analysis, the search for the inner motives of that character. The whole "what's my motivation" joke that people make about actors is largely something that's coming from the Stanislavski method, that actors have to basically go into every scene, every gesture, every moment, and justify what they're doing, justify their tasks, justify their motivations for acting the way that they're acting. And what they are playing in the scene is actually that hidden motivation, not whatever's the words on the page, right? And what this requires them to do is a whole lot of digging within themselves, within their psyches, within their personal histories, within their own experiences, to dredge up what they call sense memory, the things that maybe are things that have happened to them that are similar to what have happened to the character that they can sort of revisit and draw upon. It's a very kind of psychoanalytical approach to examining a character and for the actor examining themselves. They might also do something like animal work, right, where they're actually transforming their bodies to move like certain creatures, right, deciding, oh, my character, it's really they're like a dog, and that's kind of how I have to think of my movement, my work, the way that I do things here. There's a really wonderful essay that you should try to find about Joaquin Phoenix's performance in The Master that essentially talks about his character and his movements like he's an animal. And it's really, I mean, it'll change the way you watch the movie. But the other part of it is Stanislavski talks about a type of work called active analysis. That would mean kind of the work of analyzing the script is also being done through acting and often through improvisation. And so this is where it's all about the rehearsal period in the method theater world. This ultimately comes to America via Harold Clurman's The Group Theater with three main proponents of it who kind of form different acting schools based upon their interpretation or their uses of the method. You have Lee Strasberg, Stella Adler, and Sanford Meisner, all of whom are still very prominent schools of acting approaches in both theater and film. And so you'll hear about Strasberg, Adler, and Meisner all the time. Now, let's look at some scenes that basically introduce method acting to cinema. It, of course, starts in the theater, in the group theater, largely in productions like Brando's performance in the stage production of A Streetcar Named Desire, where every person in the movie is a method actor. In the play, is adhering or following the method. When you get to the film adaptation that Elia Kazan does, just about everyone in there is reprising their role from the stage production, except for the role of Blanche Dubois, which was mainly played by Jessica Tandy on stage. We have Vivien Leigh doing it in the movie. And the scene where Stanley Kowalski meets Blanche Dubois for the first time in A Streetcar Named Desire is a study in a clash of acting styles that serves the purpose of the movie, but it is remarkable to watch in real time. To watch the method actor Marlon Brando up against the classic Hollywood actor in Vivien Leigh and see how the styles just are from completely different worlds, and they're more or less in completely different movies. That might be hard to notice. I'm going into it a lot beforehand because you're going to need to look out for that, because you're really going to have to do a whole lot of time not getting completely swept away by how smoking hot Marlon Brando is. It is a very steamy scene. I'm just letting you know that the heat is real, because he is one electrifyingly handsome dude in this scene. So
you must be Stanley. I'm Blanche.
Oh, you're still sister.
Yes.
Oh, hi. Yeah, where's the little woman?
In the bathroom.
Oh. Oh, where you from, Blanche?
Well, I live in Oriole.
Oriole, huh? Oh, yeah, that's right, Oriole. That's not my territory. Man, look, it goes fast in the hot weather. You want a shot?
No, I rarely touch it.
Well, there's some people that rarely touch it, but it touches them often. Hey, you mind if I make myself comfortable? My shirt is sticking.
Please do.
Be comfortable. That's my motto, where I come from.
It's mine, too. It's hard to stay looking fresh in hot weather. Why, I haven't washed or even powdered. Here you are.
Well, you gotta be careful. You're sitting around a damn thing, get you cold. Especially when you've been exercising hard like Paul is. Well, you're the teacher, aren't you?
Yes.
What do you teach?
English?
Well, I never was very good English student. How long are you here for?
Well, I don't know yet.
You can shack up here?
I thought I would if it's not inconvenient for you all. Traveling wears me off.
Well, take it easy.
What's that?
Not those cats.
and the cat, right? That's this whole scene. Sorry, give y'all a second to cool off. But Brando here is playing with Vivien Leigh the way a cat would play with a ball of yarn or something like that. And you can see the clash here. The more mannered, overly enunciated, overly kind of formal theatrical performance of Vivien Leigh, that is the traditional Hollywood studio performance, is being completely thrown off by Brando's more naturalistic method performance, where you can barely understand anything that he's saying. And that's often a criticism of the early method actors, is that they just mumble all the time and they're just grunting and stuttering and all of that sort of stuff. And part of it is because his performance is more physical than it is verbal. It's not about what he's saying. It's about the way that he asserts himself in space and moves throughout the room, where the words mean nothing. It's all the intent behind them. And because what he's saying is meaningless, right? But the way he says it and the look on his face when he says it tells you everything you need to know. So this is, this is an extreme example of how it works, but you can see how for audiences at the time who would not be accustomed to a performance like this, they are as startled by it as Vivien Leigh is here. And the startling is double when the performers are also really, really hot. Now, a less hot Brando is here in this classic scene from On the Waterfront that is maybe the most quoted method acting scene. It's from On the Waterfront, directed by Elia Kazan. This is the one when we talked about the court cases and the House for Un-American Activities Committee. This is the film that Kazan makes where he is sort of valorizing those who name names.
It wasn't him, Charlie. It was you. You remember that night in the garden? You came down my dressing room and said, "Kid, this ain't your night. We're going for the price on Wilson." You remember that? This ain't your night. My night, I could have taken Wilson apart. So what happens? He gets the title shot outdoors in a ballpark, and what do I get? A one-way ticket to Palookaville. You was my brother, Charlie. You should have looked out for me a little bit. You should have taken care of me just a little bit so I wouldn't have to take them dives for the short end money.
Well, I had some bets down for you. You saw some money.
You don't understand. I could have had class. I could have been a contender. I could have been somebody. Instead of a bum, which is what I am. Let's face it. It was you, Charlie.
And here we get the other hallmark maybe of method acting, particularly among the men, is just emotional torment, right? They're not going to do a lot of comedies. They're not going to tell a lot of jokes. It is all about emotional and spiritual anguish. That is sort of, and they are ripping themselves apart and bearing all of their psyches on screen. This has effects down the road, but these are, actors who are, as human beings, heavily tormented and are working their stuff out through the work that they're doing here, particularly Brando, but also Montgomery Clift and our next actor here, James Dean, in Rebel Without a Cause, a scene which will also make it difficult for you not to think of The Room.
Got anything to say for yourself? Not interested, huh?
Can't you answer? What's the matter with you anyhow?
He's just loaded, honey.
I was talking to Jim.
Well, I'd like to just explain. You see, we just moved here, you understand, and the kid hasn't got any friends, you understand,
Tell
and
him
we
why we
moved
moved
into
here.
it. Will you hold it, Jim?
Tell him, man, why we moved here.
Will you hold it?
You can't protect me.
Do you mind if I try? Do you have to slam the door in my face? I try to get to him. What happens? Don't I buy you everything you want? A bicycle? You get a bicycle. A car?
You buy me many things.
No. Well, not
Bought
just
me
buy.
many things.
We give you love and affection, don't we? Well, then what is it? Was it because we went to that party? Well, you know what kind of drunken brawls those kind of parties turn into. It's not a place for kids.
A minute ago, you said you didn't care if he drinks.
He said a little drink.
You're tearing me apart!
What?
You say one thing, he says another, and everybody changes back again!
That's a fine way to behave.
Well, you know who he takes after.
Oh!
Right, the torment, the anguish, being torn apart, and just the mumbles are all there to conceal an inner rage that they can't bear to articulate, but the whole performance is building toward that moment of explosion where what's really going on and what all of this is really about is going to finally be expressed and put out in the open and resolved. And so, I mean, the performances sort of are like scene work and scene analysis put into action, not just stuff that's done behind the scenes, but like it is the performance. Now we're going to jump ahead quite a bit to the next generation of method actors who come out in the new Hollywood, who are all working in the shadow of Brando. It starts a little earlier with an actor like Warren Beatty, but really it comes in through the kind of New York films that you see Scorsese do with Robert De Niro primarily, but also Al Pacino. And basically the entire cast of The Godfather are all coming out of the Strasberg School. Lee Strasberg himself is in The Godfather Part 2 as Hyman Roth. So you see this a lot in the 70s. It's sort of the heyday of the auteur, the American auteur, and the method actor working together, all just working their stuff out on the screen. So this is the final scene of Raging Bull, where we get a new layer to the method performance. And so this is Robert De Niro you're about to see, believe it or not.
Some people aren't that lucky. Like the one that Marlon Brando played in On the Waterfront, an up-and-comer who's now a down-and-outer. You remember that scene in the back of the car with his brother Charlie, a small-time racket guy, and it went something like this. It wasn't him, Charlie, it was you. You remember that night at the Garden, you came down my dressing room and you said, "Kid, this ain't your night. We're going for the price on Wilson." Remember that? This ain't your night. My night. I could have taken Wilson apart that night. So what happens? He gets a title shot outdoors in a ballpark, and what do I get? A one-way ticket to Palookaville. I was never no good after that night, Charlie. It was like a peak you reach, and then it's downhill. It was you, Charlie. You was my brother. You should have looked out for me a little bit. You should have looked out for me just a little bit. You should have taken care of me just a little bit. Instead of making me take them dice for the short-end money. You don't understand. I could have had class. I could have been a contender. I could have been somebody. Instead of a bum, which is what I am. Let's face it. It was you, Charlie.
Okay, so here there are some layers going on in this scene. First is De Niro's physical transformation. Now, an actor of the more British theatrical, classically trained school would get the makeup artist in the room and put on a fat suit and put on, all the prosthetics and all this stuff to make this character. But that's not good enough for Bobby D. No, what he has to do is they have to suspend filming for a few months for De Niro to literally put on all of this weight to play the heavy scenes for LaMotta's character at the end of Raging Bull. So he's super fit for the earlier scenes. They shoot all of those. They take a break. He puts on the weight. He comes back. They shoot these scenes that are spread throughout the movie of him older and heavier. A complete physical transformation. He can't wear the fake fat suit because that's not real, right? That's inauthentic to the character, and it's all about authenticity, even to the point of this kind of physical transformation. And after Raging Bull, this is when you get the definition of method acting getting so specific and so sort of skewed to being all about physical transformations and never breaking character. Those sorts of things that you hear about more often now, whether it's about Daniel Day-Lewis or Heath Ledger or Jared Leto or Jim Carrey doing Andy Kaufman. All of that kind of stuff is where we're at now with method acting, and it largely comes from here. Then there's also the delicious part of this scene where you have Robert De Niro pretending to be a real person, Jake LaMotta, who is pretending to be Marlon Brando's character in On the Waterfront, who is a washed-up boxer. Right? He's quoting that clip that we just saw. So the layers of artifice here are kind of wild, because you have a tremendous actor, De Niro, pretending to be someone else who is a bad actor, pretending to be a good actor who's also a boxer, right? So there's a whole lot of stuff happening all at once here that De Niro is having to somehow navigate, right? That's the real weight that the scene is carrying. Now, what's the legacy of method acting? Simply put, it transforms screen acting, right? The kind of screen acting that we saw in the classic Hollywood period would look ridiculous in a movie today. And that's not because that style of acting is necessarily bad, but it's because the naturalism of the method has made any other kind of performance ring false and artificial. And we are still living in the shadow of it and kind of expect that of the performances that we see. And that if a movie is going to depart from that style, whether that's in a movie like Moulin Rouge, or maybe in the kind of period throwback kind of movies like, Pleasantville or Down with Love or Far From Heaven or something like that, we are seeing those old-fashioned performances, but they're in quotation marks, right? We're kind of being told ahead of time that this isn't natural, which is not really how they used to be presented, right? So we get that kind of stuff going on. We also get the notion of authenticity being more important than glamour, right? Cary Grant performances don't give a damn about authenticity, right? It's just about being Cary Grant, and nobody minds, right? Nobody complains, oh, that's so fake. She's like, oh, Cary Grant's so darling and charming, right? That's what matters. But what matters now has changed, and a lot of that has to do with method acting. But also now the way we talk about method acting leads to certain kinds of excesses, and not only the excessive weight loss or weight gain. So we see that in De Niro. You see that in Christian Bale all the time, the physical transformations that he does for something like The Machinist or Rescue Dawn, where he's dropping down to like double-digit weight numbers rather than weighing 100 pounds. And then, of course, the bulking up to play someone like Vice President Cheney. You have that sort of stuff going on. You have the excesses of Jared Leto just being a jerk to his co-stars because he's in character as the Joker, to the more intense stuff where that alleges where Heath Ledger was still couldn't get out of his Joker performance, and was self-medicating to try to cope with that, leading to his death. You have all of those sorts of things going on that are really about this sort of twisted understanding of method acting that in the popular consciousness that sort of equates basically like physically abusing yourself or being abusive towards others with good performances. And the sexism of it is in that like most of this stuff is kind of macho male stuff, right? But also we see it in the way that performances by women are often judged, in the way that any physical transformation that an actress makes, in which she makes herself less glamorous, is automatically viewed as a more daring performance, right? And you can see the Oscar winners of the past 20 years or so, how many of them for Best Actress or Best Supporting Actress involve that kind of physical transformation, like weight gain or deliberately making themselves less attractive or something like that. It's that rawness is now sort of translating into a different kind of thing that is not necessarily very flattering or really even acknowledging the talent that goes into a performance, right? Acting, of course, is more than gaining or losing weight, right? And just because someone gains or loses a lot of weight does not make their performance better or worse, right? There's so much more to it. Yet, culturally, we this sort of collides with our skewed beauty standards to equate the two, and also, though, the method actors who are women gain much less attention as being exemplars of the method, right? Whether that is someone like Jane Fonda, or also, an actor like Marilyn Monroe, who was trained in the Stanislavski method and actually gave most of her estate to Lee Strasberg's acting school in her will. So this is the note I want to end on, is to look at the way here in the saddest movie ever made, The Misfits, the way that Monroe plays a method performance in this scene that is as meta as De Niro's performance at the end of Raging Bull. This movie, The Misfits, is written by her, at the time, ex-husband Arthur Miller, playwright who also wrote The Death of a Salesman and The Crucible, and he writes the part for her. It's basically about her. And so here she is playing a version of herself that is also asking her to grapple with her on-screen persona and her public perception, all in the guise of like a really weird, sad Western melodrama. The other thing that makes this movie sad is that all three of the main stars in the movie, Clark Gable, Marilyn Monroe, and Montgomery Clift, are dead within a few months of the film's release. So this is, for all of them, their last screen performance. So here we'll end with this clip from The Misfits.
You're a real beautiful woman. It's almost kind of an honor sitting next to you. You just shine in my eyes. That's my true feeling, Rosalind. What makes you so sad? I think you're the saddest girl I ever met.
The first man never said that. I'm usually told how happy I am.
That's because you make a man feel happy.
I don't feel that way about you, Kay.